Last week's NATO summit in Madrid and subsequent discussions have represented a bit of a watershed moment for the West on the global stage to unite and officially declare, as they've done, China a threat. Now, we've known that here in Australia for some time, and we've borne the brunt of their trade retaliatory measures for speaking out. But what, in practical terms, does this step up from NATO in terms of real action as opposed to rhetoric mean? Joining us now for his take on all of this is Peter Jennings, former head of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute and now a director of his own advisory firm, Peter Jennings Strategy Consultants. Peter, great to have you on the show. Congratulations on your new business endeavour. You've written very perceptively in The Australian that the honeymoon is over, and you say that Australia must now, as NATO has done, set out some clear principles for our relationship with China. You say we can't ignore them. They're an important trade partner, but we have to set some ground rules. What do you propose?
Well, not budging on Australia's sovereign interests, which means we need to continue to promote freedom of navigation through the South China Seas. We can't compromise our interests just in the hope that we might be able to get talks from China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs or the Defence Department there. And, you know, that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be talking to China or can't talk to China. Plenty of countries can. But let's not imagine that talking is going to change anything. You know, China is out to dominate the Indo-Pacific region. That's its agenda. There's no mystery about it. We are going to have to make ourselves as strong as we can, and we're going to have as many friends and allies as we can to resist that Chinese attempt to weaken the US and to weaken the US alliance.
Let's talk about the PM's visit to Ukraine. You were very supportive of him going to Kyiv. I suspect you're pleased that he made the trip. But on the broader issue, where to from here? Because, you know, I read a lot about commentary from the European leaders. There's a real risk the longer this war goes on, we could end up with poor old Ukraine, who's fighting for their lives quite literally and their freedoms, being forced to cop some sort of peace deal that stops the bombing, sure, but ends up giving Russia the territory it's captured over the last little while, which ends up being a real loss for Ukraine, despite pretty valiant fighting.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the lesson would be if you tough it out long enough, you'll get what you want. That, I think, is the thing that we have to make sure Russia does not achieve. And also China doesn't think that it can copy in Taiwan or any place else. And that, I think, meant that the NATO summit was really important to sort of put a little bit more energy back into the European perspective that Ukraine can actually successfully defend itself as long as it's getting access to the weapons it needs from the West. And I thought it was really good, Peter, that we had, you know, four of the most important democracies in the Indo-Pacific there as well, to make the point that it's not just about a war in Europe, it's actually something that is important globally because of the axis of power that now exists between Russia and China. It's in every democracy's interests to want to be strong and to push back against that. So NATO was important. I know there were domestic factors that, you know, were calling on Anthony Albanese's time here in Australia, but the Prime Minister didn't get to pick when NATO met. And had he not been there, I think it would have done real damage to Australia's claim that European countries should be interested in our security just as we are interested in Ukraine's security.
Look, I couldn't agree more. I think sometimes it's pretty base to criticise a Prime Minister travelling. He went, four different places in that period of time he was away. These trips are hellish. I've been on them. They're very short. They're brutal in terms of the hours that you spend. I think it was a good move. But also, now that he's home, he's got to get back to the domestic stuff. Just help me out on this one. The UN nuclear watchdog is in Australia, and they're reviewing all the technical work that sits behind our recent announcement on nuclear subs. They've told Penny Wong that there's a lot of work to be done before the AUKUS submarine deal can be approved by them. Now, this is what shocked me, by them. I didn't appreciate it. We needed a UN agency in order to give us the licence to have our own defence submarines.
Well, I thought it was interesting that this happened, Peter. I mean, the thing that they can approve is to say that Australia is above board as far as our commitment to the International Atomic Energy Agency is concerned, and therefore we will provide them with information about the holdings of nuclear fuel. The thing that I find strange in the IAEA's approach is that what we are talking about here is a sealed reactor, which is never going to be opened by Australia. It's going to be something that will live in the submarine until the submarine is retired. And yet the IAEA seems to think that this is an important issue, that they'll be able to measure that amount of uranium, before and after a submarine deploys. I don't think that's realistic. I think we will be able to account for whatever is in the reactor of the submarine, and that's like a one-off accounting measure, and that should be it. But really, the essence of it is, we want to be sort of in good order, sort of behaving as we would expect other countries to behave in terms of how we account for holding nuclear material. So there's got to be some way that we can deal with the Atomic Energy Agency. Emphatically, though, Peter, they don't get a veto on whether we operate nuclear submarines. That's a sovereign choice which the government has made. And I think we need to stick to that at the same time as we, polish our arms control credentials.
There you go. I knew you'd have the answer, and appreciate the clarity. Peter Jennings, thank you for your time.